I was awoken by the sound of gunshots. It seems that the infected had finally arrived. It was time to leave and try to head for the evacuation point. This small converted garage, not lacking for supplies. I had plenty of canned food by the time I left, and a frying pan to act as a trusty weapon. Whilst I was in no immediate danger from the tall garden fence, it still paid to be quiet. Last thing we wanted is to draw the zombies in. For this very reason, I wasn't too excited about finding a gun in the landlord's cabinet. This would be a holdout weapon at best. I'd never used one, and I doubted my accuracy would be good enough to stop a zombie. With the back door locked, a key under the plant pot would have been preferable, but since that wasn't an option, I was going to have to explore to see if any of the windows were unlocked, or at the very least if I could force them open. I didn't really want to smash them. I would have been cut to ribbons trying to crawl through, and I didn't really have thick enough clothes to protect myself. Leaving the house wasn't an option. I'd just be caught in the crossfire between the residents of Little Township defending their homes and the oncoming horde. I needed proper supplies and proper equipment. Picking myself off the floor, I was glad to see my efforts were worthwhile. The kitchen was well stocked, a mix of fresh food, canned goods, and also bottled water, which would be vital for the journey. There was also some alcohol as a bonus, not really to drink, but it would be proved as vital if I got bitten as a disinfectant. My next goal was to find a way to carry all of this, and a better weapon for self-defense. I'd have to be wary, however. I hadn't seen either occupant of the house, and also there was plenty of windows that I could be spotted from the street, and I don't think I could have closed all the curtains in time if I tried. So, after ensuring I had a quick escape by unlocking the back door, it was time to go upstairs. It was far more sheltered than the rest of the house. Though I immediately ran into my infected landlord and found myself having to put her down, putting a dint in the pan. In hindsight, this place would have made an excellent safe house. With the equipment and supplies I found in the storeroom, I could have easily started to try growing my own food in the back garden, while remaining safe and discreet. But for now, I simply took a torch, a metal pipe as a new weapon, and a hammer and nails in case I needed to fortify anywhere along the road. My new acquisitions all go into a handbag I found in the bedroom. I still wanted a backpack, and this handbag certainly wasn't my colour, but I took the time to take a peek out the window. All hell was breaking loose out there, so all I could do is close the curtains and move on. The proximity of the buildings making it difficult to know where the zombies were hammering, and then I was distracted by my fellow survivors' plight, so I didn't notice the door next to me shaking before I opened it. My infected landlord's partner lunging out, catching me unawares. I barely fought her off, lacerating my hand in the process. This is bad. I was already injured, bleeding. But I was alive and uninfected, and that was the important thing, even if I was wincing as pouring this bourbon over my bleeding wound. If I had more of a clear head, I would have also sterilised the cloth before I wrapped it around my hand, but I panicked slightly and simply just wanted to bandage myself. Looking for painkillers, I checked the medicine cabinet, but there was only antidepressants inside. These would still be useful, just in case if the grimness of the situation started getting to me, or if mentally I was unable to cope. Trying to calm down, I took a moment to refresh myself, cleaning the blood from my face, and also filling up my water bottles for the journey. But my lax attention would be punished once more. A third zombie, someone I didn't recognise, ambushing me from behind. In my rage, I shoved her away again and again until I caved in her skull. I should have realised someone had to infect the occupants, and this was a lesson that would often haunt me for the rest of my journey. Warily exploring the rest of the house now, I was relieved to see that the living room was unoccupied. The various books within it a bit beyond my level. I did help myself to a beginning cooking guide, however, just as something to read in case I had to haul up anywhere for any period of time. A noise in the back garden drew my attention, but it looked like it was another survivor, Aaron, who curiously was trying all windows before doors. Not that I could blame him. One of the locals. It looked like he was searching for other survivors and supplies. I guess he was planning on making a safe house, but for now he was willing to join me and watch my back. I wanted to have a check next door. I thought I'd heard people running around, but I didn't know if they were infected or still living. He was also one of the stronger lads of the area, so I could trust him to hold his own if needed. Finally now out on the street, We were most fortunate that a house alarm had drawn away most of the zombies. But that wasn't going to stop me from having a backup, so leaving the garage door open, I moved into next doors. Time to have a look round and check what we could find. Aaron, however, decided he didn't want to wait for me and stick around, moving out into the streets at the sound of the gunshots. I'm not sure what he meant by corpse piling, but from the sounds of his voice, he was moving around the various dead bodies. Potentially he was checking the zombies for any useful gear, and then arranging them to be disposed of later. So selfishly I decided to gorge myself on some of the fresh food I'd found. It wouldn't have lasted in my bag, and I needed to build up a bit of fat before I went on my journey in case supplies ran out. Again, this was selfish, but right now I didn't know how long I'd be welcomed by the locals, and I may be driven off. Entry via window is going to become a habit, but the exertion did have its downside. The bloody laceration on my hand now causing my bandage to be soiled. This was a nice safe moment to just take a break, grab some more food, and change my bandages. As I noticed, just as I entered, another survivor was wandering the building. It was Leslie, the woman I'd seen earlier running for her life. She's a lot more confident now, golf club in hand, and it also seemed like she'd gathered some other friends. Perhaps they were planning on staying here and making it a safe house. Thankfully they didn't object to me taking a few items here and there, although I was still looking for a backpack. But there was no success here either, and not wanting to leave behind my additional medical supplies or food, that just left a few of the accoutrements I'd picked up. The hand torch and mug after I drank the water would have to go, and perhaps it was time to just take a break and calm my mind reading this book on cooking. If I couldn't take it with me, then I'd have to just put up with a newspaper instead. Motivated by the read, I decided to cook some stir-fry. I didn't know when next I'd have the chance for a hot meal, and this would also help with the weight. All of this food together in one more healthy meal would probably be better than eating the vegetables raw. And more importantly, it was a moment of normality in this otherwise chaotic situation. By the time I'd finished my meal though, it was already dark. I wouldn't be travelling tonight. I hadn't seen my host for a while either, and I was growing worried. Aaron, on the other hand, had popped into the house every so often just to report in between piling up the corpses outside. It seemed that the townsfolk had done pretty well. The sound of gunshots had faded. I couldn't hear any zombies either. But I wasn't going to be careless. At the very least, I was going to close the curtains when I went to rest, just in case any wanderers passed by and spotted me movement. That night I slept well with the help of the wine, and in the morning, speaking to Aaron, I was introduced to Ryan, a friend of his. The two seemed to be quite willing to team up with me, but neither wanted to follow once I started moving. Perhaps they thought they had their own jobs to do, or maybe they were just giving me a lip service. Unable to get through the back gate, I had to leave my bag behind as well. Hopping over the fence, I'd search around for now in the eerily quiet streets. It wasn't quite for long, however. As I passed the diner, the sound of gunshots within caught my attention. I'm no hero, but I thought I'd go and help. If I could hold off the zombies, I'm sure they could reload and help me finish them off. Or at least that's what I thought, until the coward ran out the door and left me to be swarmed by zombies. One of the infected stumbling from behind a shelf, once again lacerating my hands. I needed gloves. My cry of pain catching her attention long enough for her to open the door and peek in, but obviously not willing to help. If adding insult to injury, she barely batted an eye at me as she pushed past to go to the pantry once I'd dealt with the infected. I'd had some harsh words to say, but I was too busy. I needed to get back and bandage my wounds before they got infected. Collecting my bag, I decided to return, hoping that the place hadn't been cleared out. Thankfully there was plenty of food, though I wouldn't be taking it, but the storeroom was disappointing. What was most useful was, however, a hand axe buried in the skull of a zombie. This would be my new weapon, at least for now. With nothing for me here, I led in the other sides and left. Hopefully they'd irritate Ruth. That was the only petty revenge I could have. But before I stepped out into the rain, I put on the varsity jacket I found on a dead zombie. Somehow spotless, this would at least give me some protection, and from the injury I'd had so far it was obvious I'd need it. Moving through the parking lot and towards the main road, I was amazed. The locals really had fought off nearly all of the infected apart from a handful of stragglers. Their corpses stripped of everything of value and ready to be collected and burned. The overwhelming smell and the buzz of flies was horrible, but I still needed to stay. I had to do my own searching. Whilst they'd been mostly picked clean, I had found a replacement for my busted timepiece, and also another gun and some ammo. I'd try out my new weapon on a straggler at some point and see which of the two guns I wanted to keep. But for now, it was time to move in and check out the motel. I was sure whoever had been here was not one of the lucky survivors. Even though they'd boarded up everything, all of the doors had been smashed down, and the pile of corpses showed that the owner did not go down without a fight. Once again, I couldn't find a backpack or anything to carry my load with, but the M9 pistol would be handy. Laser sight on it made it more tempting than the other two guns I'd found so far. After an hour of tedious searching and nothing to gain for it in the motel, I came across one of the other stragglers. It was time to try out this target practice. I'd never used a gun before. I'm British. Firearms aren't exactly commonplace here, unless you count those in computer games. And shooting a real gun's pretty damn different from shooting a light gun. The first shot having caused a piece of crap to jam, and now I knew why the owner had died or discarded it. And now too I would be discarding it. I hadn't even considered the risk of jamming. My own inexperience, the scarcity of ammo, and the noise attracting more zombies had all been on my mind. But with this made me discard this gun and one of the others. I'd keep the M9 though, but not for myself. I'd be giving that to someone who could actually use a gun. It seemed like it was in good condition and I had plenty of ammunition. Having disposed of the straggler, I moved into the general store, taking the time to freshen up my bandages and grab a few things to have as a snack. The other survivor here, a local, he was giving me a dirty look as I moved through and checked out the railings. There wasn't much in my size, and also not much that would be more protective than this varsity jacket was already wearing. Considering I was seeing everyone with duffel bags, it was getting frustrating I couldn't find one of my own. I just found a miner's helmet, trying it on out of curiosity, planning on discarding the relatively heavy item, when the asshole shoved me away from the shelves. Apparently, he decided to claim the entire store as his own. This is what I was worried about. It was this kind of behaviour why I wasn't staying in this small town. Whilst the locals had fought back the first wave of infected and established several safe houses throughout their town, they were becoming increasingly fractious towards outsiders and those not in their little groups. With each passing day, the search for supplies was going to get harder, and only then it was going to be a matter of time until shots were fired between them. It was only the second day, and I'd been ignored by the two people who had agreed to help me, used as zombie bait by a third, and now violently shoved out of a store. The message was clear, I wasn't welcome here anymore. So my search took me towards the edge of town. I was looking for a vehicle, a rucksack, and anywhere that wasn't really a safe house at this point. As wandering into one, I got shooed out with a gun in my face. I decided that town really wasn't safe for me anymore. Approaching midnight, I found myself in a place that gave me a great sense of deja vu. And finally, I found a small backpack. A fanny pack, but it still counted. Now I just needed to clear out the zombies and make this place safe just for the evening. And for my trouble, I ended up injured again. By the time I reached the evac point, I'd be covered in scars. If I survived at all. As usual, I didn't sleep well. Waking up at 4 AM, I decided now was as good a time as any to leave town. At least under the cover of darkness, I wouldn't have to worry about other survivors causing problems. I'd also hoped to loot a few of the buildings on my way out, but those on the edge of town seemed to be already occupied, much to my frustration. A scream for help caught my attention. The cynic in me told me to walk on, but I just couldn't do it. This would be the last time I would help anyone from town. They'd already shown I wasn't welcome, but I I wasn't just going to stand around and let someone be eaten. I was trying to creep up on the zombies, but they're surprisingly alert when they want to be. She'd already finished off the first one as I reached her. Then, as I pushed down the second, a golf club to the head dealt with that. But as we fought the third one together, she staggered in front of one of my blows, and I accidentally caught her with the axe. Only a glancing blow, but it was enough to set her bleeding. I found myself falling back, the zombie taking hit after hit, and then as she rejoined me, she tried to shove me into the zombie before downing it with her golf club. I was about to apologise for earlier when she took a swing at my skull, hitting me quite hard. So I repaid the favour. She was obviously holding a grudge, and I wasn't going to let anyone come up behind me and try and finish me off. She turned me into a murderer, the ungrateful cow. It turned out someone else had been watching the whole fiasco. Wayne from town just came up behind me. He didn't even say a word, he just took food and left. Perhaps he just agreed with my actions, or he just didn't care. Or even if he didn't care, I did. And I think this is what finally broke my calm. For the rest of my journey I would be in a panic, my heart racing, and the stress forever building up. I could never quite calm down after this moment. I was also painfully aware of gunshots in the distance. That was never a good sign, and that was in the direction I needed to go. Maybe another wave of infected were moving in, and if they weren't, they would be soon, thanks to the noise. I'd barely stepped away from the cooling body when I ran into Leslie again. My missing host from earlier. I was glad she survived, and it looks like she'd actually had the same idea, leaving town in the early hours of the morning. Since we were both heading in the same direction towards the evac zone, I invited her along. She seemed accepting, though nervous, and I didn't blame her. We'd barely gone down the road when she tried to ask about earlier, before changing her mind and telling me not to worry about it. I guess she'd seen what had happened, though she seemed to be accepting of it. Perhaps she understood that I wasn't going to hold back if someone was going to try and take my life. I was just glad it was cleared up, and that she was good at sneaking. The less fighting we did, the better, and hopefully we could save the bullets for her revolver. During our conversation, it seemed that someone else had also come down the road intending to leave town. While they didn't want to join us, I was quite happy for the company, until some idiot came storming out of the woods. The guy with his bolt-action rifle, trailing a bunch of zombies behind him, pathetically trying to shoot them at point blank and missing. Sadly for him, I was all out of sympathy. After what had happened with Ruth and the other woman, I wasn't risking my life to try and save his. And also now I had Leslie to worry about. That didn't mean I wouldn't save others from this man's stupidity though. I noticed a doctor was also trying to flee the area, so I called them over and got them into my group. Perhaps together we could get out of here, though it now changed my direction. I was planning on going east, but that meant we'd have to run past Mr. Moron again, or into the woods and cause noise. We had better chance if we stayed near the road. And as fate would have it, this meant I could warn someone else about the oncoming swarm. Now there was 4 of us running for our lives, as the idiot with the rifle kept firing, ringing a dinner bell for every zombie in the area. At one point we thought we'd outrun them, and also Mr. Moron. But then... gunshots. More distant, but still gunshots. We'd have to keep going. There'd be no rest for us yet.